There is nothing covered that shall not be revealed. I'm Jessica Denson, and this is Lights On. You are here on the home of not just exposing all of the egregious, illegal behavior of this disgusting, criminal, corrupt administration, but actually doing something about it. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to the Jessica Denson YouTube channel. When I'm not doing this show, I am actively doing everything in my power to get Donald Trump constitutionally removed from office. And that, frankly, is the only reason why I continue to do this show, to make sure that that platform is amplified, to make sure that conversation is normalized. And that's what we're talking about every single day. I don't think we could have a better opportunity to hone in on the necessity to get this man out of office than what we are dealing with right now with the Epstein scandal, the Epstein disclosures, the continuing unveiling of more and more evidence of what we have known to be true for so many years, that this man, Donald J. Trump, is a sexual predator who has preyed upon unwitting victims, preyed upon the most vulnerable in our society, and of course, preyed upon his very own, the MAGA base that has been duped and fooled by him for so many years. And now, little by little, and probably what is the most visible public turn on Donald Trump in many years, is seeming to wake up from this delusion. So this is a perfect opportunity to continue to amplify the criminality of this administration and why it must be removed from power. We can't sit on this. We cannot. I'm going to talk today a lot about what's going on with Epstein. I'm going to tell you about some other wonderful feedback I got from a social impact summit in Hollywood, where people in the arts, some very well-known actors and performers and others who are doing amazing philanthropic work, weighed in on the state of our democracy and what we need to do. So I think we need to do two things. I think we need to keep having this conversation, because this really is exposing who Donald Trump really is, and we cannot depend on it. We can't depend on it to, like so many of the scandals that should have ended Trump many times over, we can't depend on it to organically happen on its own. We must still be taking action to have Donald Trump removed. And that action, this, like I said, this is a perfect opportunity to normalize that, to say, now is the time. If we're not doing it now, what are we waiting for? For God's sakes, this is a man who more and more evidence is being exposed on a daily basis has likely violated minors. We know this is a sexually an adjudicated sexual predator. This is somebody who has been accused of multiple women, dozens of women, for years, of having violated them. For God's sakes, can we have some self-respect and put an end to this man who is violating us all, who is violating our country, who is violating the world by this abusive criminal administration? But my God, what a week. I mean, every turn, every time Donald Trump tries to make this issue, this Epstein scandal, go away, another disclosure comes out, another proof of his complicity and friendship with Epstein comes out. I was reading just through this Guardian article from a few days ago about Maria Farmer, and you've probably seen Maria Farmer pop up if you've been watching primetime news in the past couple of days. She was somebody who back in the 90s urged the FBI to investigate Trump in connection with their investigation of Jeffrey Epstein. She was brought into an office to be interviewed by Epstein. And when she was in this office in a dark waiting room, she was approached first by Donald Trump, who came in a very ominous way, stood over her in a very intimidating way. And her mechanism of defending herself was to give him kind of an ugly look, an ugly face, as she described it. And right at that moment, Jeffrey Epstein came out of his office and literally said to Donald Trump, "She's not for you. She's not for you." So Maria Farmer came forward years ago. She was among the first women to report Epstein and his partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, of sex crimes back in the 90s. She urged the FBI to investigate Trump when she was interviewed by them in 2006. she has been recounting these stories. She is very bravely coming out now again and putting her name on the record to let people know just how close these two individuals were, just how close. And of course, Trump's denials on this subject are, as usual, so obviously a lie. So obviously a lie. And this is really the thing. Donald Trump, it's so insulting. It's really so insulting to us as a society that we have to continue to pretend like this man is legitimate, continue to pretend like he is the leader of the free world from a legitimate constitutional standpoint, to continue to forget for one moment that we have gone through years of trying to find justice for all the crimes that he has committed. While he was out of office for those 4 years, we watched 4 separate jurisdictions in 4 separate cases bring criminal indictments against this man. He was convicted of 34 felony counts for trying to hide a sexual affair in order to get elected the first time illegally. Okay, this is, I mean, it is such an insult. It is such an insult that we have to deal with this at this point. And that's why I'm so happy that people are finally waking up. And I really do think this is an opportunity for this to be a turning point. I am certainly not going to rest on it. I'm certainly not going to count on it to do the job of getting rid of Trump on its own, or waking up his supporters and then just, having everything work out nicely. We have to use the levers constitutionally that we have right now to get him out of office. And that is what I've been doing incessantly. We are making progress. I mean, look at what happened just this week. I was in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday with Representative Al Green once again, and John Bonifaz, president of Free Speech for People. We were joined by the Women's March, and these wonderful group of activists who came to deliver nearly 1 million signatures to Congress in support of Donald Trump's impeachment and removal. Alexandra, who works for Free Speech for People, who you see speaking there, literally read off multiple times the 19 impeachable offenses that Trump has committed since he took office on January 20th, starting with the pardoning of people convicted of seditious conspiracy and all of the other January 6th convicts who he used, very much in theme with this predatory behavior. He literally uses his own supporters to go out and commit the crimes that he's not willing to commit on his own and turn them into criminals. So starting with that on day one, the pardoning of these individuals, and of course, all of the egregious defiance of court orders, illegal acts every single day are enumerated in that list of 19 impeachable offenses that's at impeachtrumpagain.org. So all of those impeachable offenses together with thumb drives filled with almost 1 million signatures of Americans who want this to be done. Just those who frankly know about this petition, because not nearly enough know about it, were delivered to Jim Jordan's office and to Jamie Raskin's office. We met with a staffer in Jamie Raskin's office who accepted those files from us. I thought that Jamie Raskin should have been there himself, but his staffer very graciously welcomed us to the House Judiciary Committee to receive those boxes and the reading out of those impeachable offenses. But what I started off to say is that we were there on Wednesday when we got the surprise news that the House was adjourning early and was not going to, it seemed like they very much want this Epstein situation to go away. They did not want to have any more forced votes on possibly compelling the Justice Department to release these files. And yet, on Wednesday, the Democrats were successful in getting a vote out of the House Judiciary Committee to compel the DOJ to subpoena the DOJ for these files. And it was a very interesting vote that included, it was an 8-2 vote that included 3 Democrats getting this vote out of committee. James Comer, Republican James Comer, who we're familiar with as being a very ardent MAGA figure is expected to sign the subpoena and forward it to the DOJ to compel these articles. So already the pressure is working. And what I see this as is an indication of just how effective pressure can be, just how effective you can be when you summon the will to change the conversation and don't let it go. I really, really loved what Representative Green said in response to many reporters. And when he was speaking there at the House Triangle on Wednesday, he always frames this whole impeachment possibility as not a lack of ability, of power, of constitutional authority, of anything but a lack of will. That's all it is a lack of will. That's all that is standing between us and getting Trump and his corrupt, illegal, predatory administration out of power, is a lack of will. That's literally all that it is. So you have seen the effectiveness of having the will and the willingness to stay on a subject like this Epstein subject, as we should, and how you can pressure even his most ardent supporters in Congress to vote against him. Okay? So to anyone who says impeachment is not possible, anyone who says we did it twice, it failed, why isn't going to work this time? For goodness sakes, you give up after failing twice? Is that what any child who was ever raised by a parent who cared about their success told them? Once you fail twice, never try again? Of course not. They simply have to have the will. And this is the byproduct of not letting something go, of harping on it relentlessly, and of effectively changing the conversation. And of course, this is a perfect conversation. It's a perfect conversation for Trump supporters in particular, because they have been so on top of this concern that they seem to have in MAGA over sex predators of children, which is, as I've said before, really, really ironic, because there's a lot of sex predators in the GOP. Let's be honest. But this has been a cause. This is what has been the root of the QAnon conspiracy for years, is that there's some, Democratic pedophilia ring out there that they're going to expose. And Jeffrey Epstein was always at the center of this conspiracy, and who was on that Epstein list. And what you saw just this week was even one of those people that Donald Trump pardoned, one of the causes for him to be impeached, one of those individuals, the QAnon shaman, Jacob Shansley, am I getting that name right? Coming out this week, and even him turning on Trump and saying, fuck this stupid piece of shit, excuse my language, for turning on them with the Epstein files and refusing to release them, backtracking, calling them conspiracy theorists. Now they're conspiracy theorists. All the other things before didn't make them conspiracy theorists, but now that they really want the truth about Jeffrey Epstein, now they're conspiracy theorists after all these years. You've also seen figures like Tucker Carlson come out against Trump on this issue. Just the other day at Turning Point, he made a comment about this. You've seen people like Alex Jones trying desperately to figure this out in the perverted mind that he has, and all the lies that he's told of how this could possibly make sense, that his idol Donald Trump is not being forthwith with this information. But it really, really is exposing, as I said, what we've known for so many years. And in the backdrop of this, you have continually this administration abusing, weaponizing, abusing its power, trying to silence people, getting law firms to capitulate, getting networks like CBS and Paramount to fire their most popular stars and talent, to have a less critical environment for this authoritarian wannabe. And when I'm thinking about this, when I'm thinking about all of the people that are capitulating to him, that are giving in to his weapons of intimidation and attempts to silence dissent. I'm thinking about every single one of these people, the heads of these law firms, the people that sit on boards at universities, the lawyers, every one of these people, in particular if they're men, but even if they're women, any one of these people has children in their lives, okay, has young women in their lives who I bet you would do anything to defend those young women against a predator. Okay? Can you imagine how they would feel if a young woman in their life, I'm talking to the executives at CBS, I'm talking to the boards of these universities, I'm talking to the partners of these law firms who have capitulated to do the bidding of this criminal administration. How would they feel if their daughter, if their niece, if their sister was being violated by a man? And here we have someone in office who on a daily basis, more and more evidence is coming out confirming what we have known for years, that this is a man who has no qualms about violating anyone, up to and including young women. His answer to a question about what age limit he thought was appropriate was, 12 is a little bit out of the bounds. 12 years old is a little bit out of his bounds. Who more and more people are saying bragged to him about wanting to sleep with married women because it's wrong. Why did he want to do it? He wanted to do it because it was wrong. There, of course, was the lawsuit of Katie Johnson, the Jane Doe who came forward years ago and gave testimony about Donald Trump and Epstein and him having a young woman with him and Epstein who he threatened to deport, threatened to call immigration on if she didn't perform the sexual favors that he wanted. And this woman's lawsuit just disappeared out of the ether years ago. Dozens and dozens of women have come forward to tell about how he has violated them. And this is the man. Can you look your children, your daughters, your nieces, your sisters in the eye and tell them this is the man that you are selling out everything for, that you are doing everything to protect? This is the man. Bring everything back to that, and how unforgivable, how very unforgivable this whole entire construct is. I was just thinking, when I was thinking about this episode and thinking about knowing that Donald Trump is a predator and how he has preyed on women for years. He has preyed on the people he has done business with, who he has contracted to build things for them and then not paid them for their services. How he has preyed on anyone who has tried to bring truth or justice out in a situation that he has been involved in and tried to take advantage of. He has preyed on the American people who really, honestly, a lot of the supporters that have come to him are struggling in their own ways and looking for some kind of hero, okay? I haven't really shared this directly, but if you know me, you know I was in the Fox News bubble for all of the Obama administration. It's what led me to be so brainwashed and deceived that I could support this man in the first place. And to be honest, those years of the Obama administration were a really, really tough time for me personally, for me and my family. And we were looking for answers, and we were wanting to think that there was a political solution to how we were suffering. And that was one of the reasons. That was one of the reasons that I latched on to the con, but the false promises of Donald Trump. And so many of his supporters have latched on to him for hope. I know it seems so ironic to those of us who are really in the light, but so many of his supporters have latched on to him for hope and for something better. And they genuinely, as screwed up and unbelievable as this sounds, believe that, with the inundation of the media that has done his bidding for years and that has cast his enemies or his political opponents as enemies and destructive people who want to set America on fire with their help they have believed this, and they have even looked to him as an inspirational, aspirational figure. And he has preyed on those desires, on that need for something better, and used it. And now, little by little, it seems people are waking up. With this scandal in particular, the wool is starting to be pulled from their eyes. So it's really a beautiful thing. I mean, it's been, even when, people talk to me about this right now, I'm like, this has been going on for years. I'm a very early example. I came out of this in 2017, late 2017, early 2018. And I've seen it along the way. There are so many more like me that have had our moments of awakening. But this is a really special opportunity for a mass awakening of these people who have put their trust in this predator who has literally been using them, taking them for fools, and now will do anything to shut them up so he can continue to do the damage that he wants to do to keep himself out of trouble. It's really what the whole thing has been about. I mean, his whole presidential gambit was to keep himself out of prison. This man is a criminal. It's a criminal. And you think about the incentive that he had to stay out of prison and what he would do to get back in this office where all of those indictments, all of that impending accountability would go away. What wouldn't he do to get back in that office? And then you think about the election and how unbelievable it is that he won 7 swing states on election night before we went to sleep, the same guy who couldn't fill an auditorium. And people are also starting to finally wake up to the fact that this election was anything but free and fair, and that Donald Trump and the people that were going to financially benefit from him had every incentive to help him get into that presidency at all costs. And they did. And they did. So Democrats stood down on that conversation. Kamala Harris stood down on that conversation, couldn't even get behind a single recount. We weren't asking anybody to storm the Capitol. We just wanted to recount some paper ballots to make sure our democracy wasn't being stolen from us before our eyes, and we couldn't even do that. So these windows of opportunity, they do not last forever. There was a window of opportunity to stop Donald Trump, to check and make sure he actually won the election, which I don't believe for one second that he did. There was an opportunity to use Section 3 of the 14th Amendment on January 6th to block this criminal insurrectionist from taking power and being able to continue to prey on society. And they dropped the ball then on January 6th. And now there's an opportunity. There's a limited opportunity right now to seize on both the exposure that Donald Trump is facing as to who he really is as a criminal and a predator. And there's a limited opportunity to get him out of power before the whole landscape changes. Because these people are desperate. Like I've said this for years, the devil is busy because his time is short, right? They know their time is short. And so they're going to do a lot of damage while they have that power. And the only question of how long they have that power is how much will do we have to take it away? So I want to share with you some clips from this social impact summit that I went to. It was in partnership with the Hollywood Reporter. There were some wonderful activists and, or not really so much activists as philanthropists in this event who were talking about very specific issues that are very important to them. Some of them being maternal health, especially for the BIPOC community, people who work with reentry after from prison populations, really important work there. Rebuilding with organizations like CORE, led by Sean Penn and Ann Lay. Sean Penn was at this event talking about the work he did after the LA fires and going back the work that CORE has done for years. But some of these speakers had some very important things to say about the state of our democracy, Some of them are legends, both in name and in stature, and I want to share that with you. But I just wanted to share some of this. Like I said, this theme of preying on each other, preying on people. We see it with Donald Trump preying on women, preying on his own supporters, preying on the most vulnerable in society. This is what this attack on immigrants in this country really is. It's the cruelest, most base behavior to prey on the most vulnerable. I will remind you that if anybody in power in this country ever wanted to legitimately fix the immigration problem and the influx of immigrants who come here for an opportunity, they would start by penalizing the white men who run the businesses that hire migrant labor and don't pay them enough money for it. You want to stop the influx, you want to stop the demand, cut it off at the source. And what is the source? The source is largely white men running businesses who don't want to pay more money for labor. That's the source. So the whole conversation is disingenuous. And instead, what do? They attack the most vulnerable. They attack people who are literally coming here just trying to make a living and survive. And there was some really beautiful ways of addressing this, along with some humor, kind of combination of horror and humor. And so I'm going to start off sharing with you a clip from George Lopez, and you will forgive both my poor quality camera work and camera quality, but it's really the words that I want to share with you most. So here's George Lopez, who I have been a fan of for many years.
We know what's going on, people being taken off the streets and maybe never being reunited with their families again. You know, we can't live in a world where that's okay. I mean, you should not wake up in East LA and then 2 days later be in the Sudan. I don't know. You know, people are okay with the detention center in Florida that they call Alligator Alcatraz. Yeah, that's heartbreaking. I think as a Latino, I think that the fences are there more to protect the alligators than the detainees, because you know, as a Latino, you let them loose, the fucking alligators will be shoes and belts in an hour. Stop making souvenirs out of the guards. But you know, the terror is real, and everything that we're going through, they will remember for the rest of their lives. And when you're a kid, being separated from your family, the only thing you should be afraid of is the dark. I mean, they're going to traumatize these people forever, and for no other reason than for looking like me, you know, being criminalized. The only crime that those people have committed is to do so much for so little money. So.
Yep, and that's it. Cheap labor. Cheap labor is what this whole thing is about. And it's really disgusting, the exploitation and trauma that is being brought to these people's lives. And they're just the first. They're the tip of the spear. You know, like I'm more and more reminding people, it's the Nazi playbook, you know, and people turned away because they weren't coming for them. But then in the end, then they came for me. So they're just the tip of the spear. They're the tip of the spear. Another person that was there accepting an award on behalf of a lot of the philanthropic work he's done, including with an organization called SAFE that works with reentry of people out of prison populations, in particular women. It was John Legend, who, of course, we know has been one of the probably very prominent voices out of the entertainment industry on politics. He told a story. He was kind of comparing the whole situation that we're dealing with in our country, in our democracy, to the fires in LA. You know, the fires that we are experiencing both literally and figuratively in this country right now. And he told a story about Martin Luther King and Harry Belafonte meeting. And Harry Belafonte's sharing with Martin Luther King kind of his dismay. This is in the 60s, okay, about the moral abyss that our country was in and how it seemed like we were in such a very bad place. And the hope and the answer that Martin Luther King gave to him. And then after that, he shared this about the state of our democracy and kind of brought it back to the story of Martin Luther King. So listen to this, listen in particular, and this is in particularly what I wanted to share with you from this summit is the sentiment about our lawmakers and our Constitution and the oaths that they have taken. So listen in particular for that. There's also more coming on that subject.
Government is stealing from the poorest children in our communities, the poorest children on earth, taking away food, taking away aid, taking away health care to line the pockets of the wealthiest. Day after day, our government is abandoning the shared values that have inspired us to become our best, to serve as a beacon for the world, to serve as the hope of the tired, of the tempest-tossed, of all who yearn to breathe free, to say nothing of the corruption and the cruelty and the malice and the seeming impunity. And the arsonists, the ones who ignite and stoke this destructive fire, are the ones we elected. The ones who swore an oath to protect this house, to defend its people, to defend its Constitution and the rule of law. And yet, I can hear my grandmother saying, rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. And yet, we might imagine Mr. Belafonte and Dr. King sitting together, maybe somewhere in some humble living room, maybe plastic covering the sofas, just like at my grandmother's house. Maybe somewhere on the other side. And Dr. King, despite it all, imploring Mr. B and all of us simply, become the firemen, fight these fires.
Yeah, become the firemen. He was using that analogy, you know, to all of the incredible work done by the firemen who put out the actual physical fires in LA to what we need to do. We need to become the firemen here to put out these fires. We have to take up the mantle. We have to do our part. We have to force these complicit lawmakers to do their part and honor their oath. And there was another voice there that was very clear on this subject, from John Legend to an actual legend. You know her, I'm sure. Her name is Dolores Huerta. She is 95 years old. She's a co-founder of the National Farm Workers Association, and for decades has been a legendary leader for labor, for feminism, for the rights of the oppressed. During her decades of leadership, she has endured beatings, death threats, arrests for leading nonviolent protests to give a voice to the voiceless. This woman is truly epic. And she is 95 years old, and she has as much energy now, I think, as ever. And it was so incredible to see her. I did get to meet her and speak to her for a few minutes. I want to start off, I want to play a few clips from Dolores Huerta, but here she is talking again about this same subject of the cruelty and the complicity of those in power.
The idea that you punish people because they want to have a better life for their families is very cruel. And back in the 50s, when they had these same type of deportations and repatriating, that's what they did. They repatriated people. They took people to the border and sent them home. They did not put them in prisons, okay? They did not put them in prisons. That has been, you might say, more recent legislation, mostly under the Bush administration, when that started happening. So we don't have to treat people that way. And think of this, $45 billion. $45 billion that is going to be used for ICE and to detain people and to build these prisons. That $45 billion, we need that money for education, we need that money for housing, we need that money for healthcare. So you can see that, the needs are turned upside down. And we as citizens have to really speak up and demand that this, that this not happen again. We are in a very crucial moment, critical moment, that we are losing our democracy. And make sure that the people that we know, our families, our neighbors, organizations, that everybody is civically involved.
What has been the most shocking thing, and what is the story about this that we aren't seeing in the media? What are you hearing within your organization, in your community, about what's happening on the ground that we maybe aren't witnessing?
Well, I believe the most shocking thing is when you have people in political office, people that are senators and congressmen, that have become complete cowards.
Yes,
Complete cowards.
absolutely, yes. Okay, that was my voice. You heard me, because you know how I feel about these people in Congress, the majority of them, who are just absolutely complicit in everything that is going on right now. They are absolutely complicit. And that's why the theme of this whole show is to take this moment and turn it into action, to use the exposure and how Donald Trump is trapped in the truth of what we have all known to be true about him for so many years is finally coming to light, and coming to light for those who have been blinded for so long. We have to seize this moment and turn it into action. So I was, so grateful to see Dolores and John talk about the Constitution, talk about the lawmakers and their responsibility. It always comes back to them. Yesterday was such a beautiful example of people in the community doing everything they can. But the fact of the matter is that we are a democratic republic whose power is inherent in the people. And these lawmakers are the ones whose oath-bound duty is to carry out our desires and our will. That they are responsible to carry out what we want. And what we want is to not have a predator, a criminal in office continuing to set our democracy on fire every single day, to turn things into ashes that it will take generations to rebuild. We are demanding that they do their job. So very grateful to see her bring that to light, to shed, a particular, of all things that she could point out. She said she was outraged, I'm paraphrasing, by the complicity of those in power. But she brought it back, as she usually does, to the power that we have. And she ended it with this routine that I've seen her do in other places. And it was really special to be in the room with her doing it. Let me just show you what I'm talking about.
Asking you 2 questions, and I want you to really shout the answers. And the first question I'm going to ask you who's got the power? And I want you to say, we've got the power. Then I'm going to say, what kind of power? And I want you to shout, people power. But we want to shout that so loud so the haters can hear us, okay? Okay, let's do it. Who's got the power?
We got the power!
What kind of power?
People power!
Are we going to use our people power to stop the fascism, to save our democracy, to save the people in our country and in the world? What do we say? ¿Se puede?
¡Sí se puede!
¿Se puede?
¡Sí se puede!
Let's all close with an organized hand clap that says "Si se puede," which means yes, I can. That means yes, we can. Let's go.
¡Sí se puede! 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 Yes, we can. Yes, we can. I heard her talk to, I think it was Diego Luna co-hosting Jimmy Kimmel a few weeks ago, and was telling the story about how, yes, indeed, Obama stole that tagline from her, and he knew that he did. She was the original "Yes, we can." But that is really it, folks. Yes, we can, because the power is ours. I think this whole insult that we've been dealing with as a world for the past 8-10 years with Donald Trump, this predator, this criminal, consuming our lives and doing so much damage and hurting so many people, including his own. This whole illusion has been a failure to recognize our own power. to recognize the power of truth, the power of justice. The whole thing has been us giving in advance, relinquishing the power that we have within ourselves to this obscene mockery of strength that is Donald Trump and everybody that enables him and is complicit with him. We don't have to do that anymore. We can take back our power. And it starts with each one of us on an individual basis in our own lives. And then once we get right with ourselves, we are empowered to help others and to help our democracy and our world. And this week, when I was with John Bonifaz and Al Green and Women's March in DC, I didn't expect to speak on this subject, but Alexandra was introducing the Women's March and just talking about what an incredible organization they are and the work that they've done. And I was just kind of inspired to give a window into my own experience as a woman and how that is really at the root of everything that I'm doing now. And it's a story that I've shared before, but I'll share it again right now if you haven't heard it. And that is that when I made my decision to sue the Trump campaign initially 8 years ago, it was not a political decision. It was not even ultimately a legal decision. It was a moral decision that was rooted in finally being willing to stand up for my own worth as a woman, something that I had been very, very, very reluctant to do. And I realized that it was false humility to continue living my life thinking that I could let injustices pass in my own experience and somehow think that that it didn't matter, or that I was, selfish or conceited to take care of the injustice in my own life. And I realized what a ridiculous notion that was, and that I needed to start respecting my own worth and the gifts that God had given me and my value in the world. And I had to stand up for that in a very tangible way if I was ever going to have credibility moving forward and standing up for anything else that I cared about in this world and in this life. And I've told you guys before, if you've listened, I had a Jacob wrestling with the angel kind of spiritual existential crisis where I wanted to walk away from the injustice that I witnessed on the Trump campaign, the sabotage of my character, the defamation, the psychological misogyny that I dealt with. I didn't deal with physical sexual violations. I dealt with psychological terrorism that was rooted in misogyny and sexism. And I realized that in order to be right with myself, to be able to live with myself, frankly, I had to do something about this. And I came out on the other side of that struggle with the clear direction from God to finish drafting up a lawsuit that I had taken some notes on and go to the courthouse in New York City and file that lawsuit. And I did that pro se in 2017. And that is the beginning of all of this. That was the beginning of my fight with the Trump NDAs, where I did the opposite of what everybody else in these complicit corners is doing right now by saying, oh, you're going to intimidate us. Okay, how much can we pay you? Who can we fire on your behalf? How many of our policies can we change for you? How can we limit our speech and curtail our freedom to make you happy and to survive? And instead of shutting up and making my suit go away, which is what they wanted me to do when they gave me a $1.5 million arbitration demand on Christmas Eve, I got louder. I sued them again. I endured a illegal $50,000 judgment that froze my bank accounts and kept me from working for years. So that's what brought me to where I am now, and to forging and leading this movement with some other incredible activists in the space to have this man removed from office. because it started off with acknowledging my own worth as a woman and having respect for myself and claiming my own power, which, by the way, is an ongoing process, very much an ongoing. It's a continuing. This is continuing, continuing to acknowledge and respect my own power. But each one of us have to do that. And if we do that, we can finally dispel this ridiculous, insulting illusion that we've been living with for so many years. And it really is that. What an insult. I mean, you watch the late night shows and you watch how they mock this man, and you think that this man is the so-called leader of the free world in 2025, a man who clearly lies almost every time he speaks, a guy who does the most obscene things, who had literally a walkthrough of a construction site with Fed Chair Jerome Powell last night to try to distract from the Epstein scandal, to try to say that Jerome Powell was spending too much money on a construction site, and shows up on a construction site with hard hats and literally has the Fed chair in a construction site telling the president of the United States that his figures about the cost of renovating this federal building are wrong. I mean, it is such a mockery with all of the things that are going on in the world, that we have our energy, our lives have been consumed by this insanity. Let's start to have some self-respect again. Every one of us, women, men, every single one of us. We need to have self-respect, and that self-respect will manifest itself in really bold and definitive action to save our democracy. I cannot end this show today without talking about, actually, I'm going to talk at the very end about, I'm going to give you some action items for what you can do this summer and over the August recess. And I'm going to tee it off with a letter from back to a constituent about one of these representatives' position on impeachment. But I cannot end this show without talking about what's going on in Gaza. It is absolutely sickening. People are dying of starvation, largely women and children, while the world turns away from this situation, while Donald Trump and Netanyahu play this sick game of pretending like they're working towards a ceasefire when every single time they back out of it, because, of course, Israel's real intention has never been to just protect its hostages and eliminate terrorists who are going after them. It has been to obliterate the Palestinian people and protect Benjamin Netanyahu from the crimes that he is accused of and the corruption trial that he was facing when October 7th happened. And he ignored the warnings of the female IDF soldiers on the southern border and allowed his buddies in Hamas, to whom he funneled billions of dollars, allowed them to commit an atrocity on his own people. And he has used his own people, his own hostages, in much the same predatory way that Donald Trump uses his own supporters. He has used his own people to perpetuate this war of annihilation on the people of Palestine. And so right now, as we're speaking, there are children like that one you see in that picture, dying of malnutrition, dying of starvation. We, of course, know that Israel has not allowed the aid to go in to this tiny enclave. They have fired on people who are trying to get help, trying to just feed their children. I think we are up to, if you include the numbers of people that are unaccounted for who've literally been crushed to death under rubble, it's somewhere in the range of 75,000 people. I remember like when this war started and I was coming out with numbers and I was telling people back on Midas Touch, when I was the only one on Midas Touch talking about this, I was saying like the numbers are, oh my God, we're up to 2,000. Oh my God, we're up to 10,000. And we're literally up to 75,000 people that we know of. About 60,000 accounted for Another 15 or so thousand assumed dead under rubble, crushed to death by Israeli bombs funded by American taxpayers. 75,000 people killed in Gaza, and many more atrocities in the West Bank. And many believe that the West Bank is coming next. The obliteration that is going on in Gaza is coming next for the West Bank. We can't turn away from this as a world. This is all, like I said, this is all the same picture. This cycle of abuse of the innocent, abuse of the most vulnerable to protect the most corrupt, the criminals in power. We cannot look away from this. Anyone. Do you know that I said this last week? Representative Al Green was one of only 10 people who voted against sending additional aid to Israel in a package that was voted on in the House last week. One of only 10? What is wrong with these people? What is wrong with these people? I have no words. I have no words for what's going on there and our complicity, but we cannot turn away. That I know. We cannot turn away from it. One of the articles of impeachment in the 19 that we delivered to the House this week was on the desired ethnic cleansing of Gaza that Trump has spoken in support of course, building his, lavish condos on the Gaza Strip. And the response of lawmakers when we attempt to impeach this president, as you know, is that it's not the time, or, it's a distraction. And one of our most loyal viewers and friends at this point, sent me a letter back from her representative when she called him out for voting against Representative Al Green's article of impeachment, the one he forced a vote on, which was about a month ago for the strike on Iran. And his response, I just want to read a little of that response to you because it's so ignorant, it's so uninformed, it's so assuming that his constituents don't really know what's going on here. And I just want to expose this, and I'm going to tee you up for what I'm going to ask you to do over the next couple of weeks and month. Don't let them give you excuses. Don't let your representatives give you any excuses for why they are not willing to remove this man from power now. But this is from, let me just read a little bit to you from this letter. This is from Jake Auchincloss. He represents a district south of Boston in Massachusetts. And along with other things, here's what part of what he said. He said, I understand your opposition to my vote and share your belief that President Trump's unilateral authorization of the June 22nd strikes was illegal. Article 1 of the Constitution makes that clear. Not the president, that Congress, not the president, has the authority to declare war. My vote to decision table 537, House Resolution 537, reflected my judgment about how best to focus congressional oversight efforts at this moment. The president, like every person who stands on American soil, deserves a due process. The vote on impeachment was held without any fact-finding hearings or all but cursory debate. Democrats cannot stand for the rule of law if we are seen to bypass its tenets for such a momentous act as impeachment. I don't even know where to start with this. First of all, he voted to table the article, okay? So there he is complaining about not having debate, and he voted to table the article to not have debate. That's literally the first vote. The first vote is just, are you willing to even talk about this? And his vote said no. Every one of the 128 Democrats that voted to table Al Green's article was a vote to shut down debate. So there's that excuse out the window. Focus, this is a distraction from other congressional oversight. As I have said, there is so much damage being done right now that all of the oversight in the world is not going to keep that damage from happening. It's not going to set back the clock on the years that it will take to restore the damage being done. You take out the cause of the damage. You don't deal with the symptoms. You deal with the cause. And the cause is Donald Trump and his entire illegal administration. You have to deal with the cause. You cannot say you don't have the votes right now. You cannot say that it's only your duty to uphold the Constitution when you have the votes. It is your duty to do that every single day. And every single member, even in the minority, has the power, like Representative Al Green did, to force a vote on impeachment. There's so many powers that these people have that they're not using. The other thing that he said about Donald Trump deserving due process, I mean, that one in particular, I've been listening this week to a lot of the Epstein victims coming out and, you know, how this must be so traumatic for them having to rehash this once again. And what a gaslit thing to think that Donald Trump, of all men, has not been given due process. Someone who we have spent years investigating, who we have spent years trying to have accountability for his victims. Not just victims of sexual crimes, but victims of crimes against democracy, victims of all of the deceit and corruption that he has brought to this country. There are so many victims of his. What an insult to all of the victims of his illegal behavior that you would suggest that this man has not received due process. What an insult. But if you have that concern, of course, all you have to do is vote to further the article of impeachment so we actually can have debate on it. How about that next time? How about that? So here's my call to action for you for the next couple of weeks. There is a recess going on. These people in Congress love to take their vacations, and they are having a vacation right now where they go home. And well, maybe it's not entirely a vacation. Maybe it's a lot of them will be home. And what they will be doing at home is having lots of town halls. Citizens Impeachment in particular is keeping a tracker on these town halls. You can go to citizensimpeachment.com/town halls to find it. You can also, I think there's a way to add in, if you know of a town hall that's not listed, to add it in there. I need you to go to these town halls. Find out when your representative is having a town hall, Republican or Democrat. Go to these town halls, bring your phone and videotape your interactions, stand in line, ask a question, and specifically put these people on the spot about their position on impeachment and removal. Ask them if they're only willing to honor their oath when they have the votes, or if they're willing to do that every single day. Ask them if they believe if Donald Trump has committed impeachable offenses since day one of his presidency. And if they do, why are they not acting on it? Ask them if they would be willing to file an article of impeachment themselves. Ask them if they would be willing to force a vote like Representative Green did, or at a minimum, will they vote in favor of advancing articles next time another representative with more spine than them does it? Hold their feet to the fire. These are our representatives. They work for us. This is our democracy, and it is their job to answer to you. So please go to these town halls, find out where your nearest town hall is, record your interaction, so vitally important, record your interaction, and hold these people's feet to the fire. We can be the firemen. We can be the firemen that are putting out these blazes in our democracy and are ending this. We have to regain our power. We have to stop letting a predator gaslight us into thinking that any of this is okay. It has not been okay for a long time, and it's not okay now. So thank you all so much, as always, for being part of this fight with me. Thanks for joining me today on Lights On. Such a busy week. I didn't expect to be back in DC for the second time in 1 week, but when John Bonifaz calls, I answer, and I was so grateful to be part of that delivery to Congress for the one vital thing that could solve so many of these problems, that is the beginning of solving all of the horrors that are going on getting this man removed from office. So if you want to be involved in that from an organizational standpoint, I will remind you that a few weeks ago, I'm losing track of time, maybe a couple months ago at this point, I sent up the Removal Coalition. It's at removalcoalition.org. This is for organizations to join, not specifically individuals, but organizations, as grassroots as you may be, who are staging protests, who are involved in direct lobbying and citizen engagement to get Donald Trump and his administration constitutionally removed from office. You can do this yourself. I started this in January, having never been an activist like this, like an on-the-ground activist ever in my life before, having never organized a protest. And I think I've spoken at and organized, I don't know, somewhere close to 10 at this point. So you can do it too. Find your power. Respect yourself first, and then let that love, that true love and honor for your divine gifts be expressed and reflected in your work in this world. And like Dolores Huerta said, we need it more now than ever. She said, if whatever you're doing now, you need to do more. And that really is the position that we're in. We really, really have to double down right now. So thank you all so much for being part of this fight with me. I'll remind you, I have an ongoing legal battle. That lawsuit, believe it or not, that I started in 2017 is ongoing to this day. It was very obviously, from a political standpoint, dismissed in February of this year. The entirety of my lawsuit, part of which is a black and white case of retaliation for the years of horror that I endured in the Trump administration when they came after me with that illegal NDA. That whole case, the underlying case, was dismissed when Trump took office again, and I'm appealing it. So I very much still need your help on that. If you would like to support me there, you can do it at thejessicadenson.com/donate, thejessicadenson.com/donate. And you can find all things Lights On at thejessicadenson.com. Motto, as you know, is to stand out. Thank you all so much for joining me. As always, have a wonderful weekend. Go to those town halls, be relentless, take advantage of this moment, but don't take it for granted that it will resolve itself. We have to take action and take back our power. Have a wonderful weekend and let your light shine.